Today's lesson is on proving triangles congruent, and we are going to look at some proofs. Our first proof has the given information already in the body of the proof, so let's mark up the diagram. So I have AO is congruent to DO, and then I have angle B is congruent to angle C. Now again, we always have to make sure we're taking a look at our proof where we're trying to go. So we're trying to prove that these two triangles are congruent. So I already have two pieces of information. I have one side that's congruent. I also have an angle that's also congruent. So I need one more thing. I either need another side or I need an angle. So if I look back at my diagram, I do notice that I have vertical angles. So let's put that in our proof, and then we'll mark our diagram. So I have angle AOB is congruent to angle DOC, and that is because vertical angles are congruent. So I'm going to mark this and this. Now I notice that I have another angle. So I just have to decide if I have them in a good order that I can use. So I have an angle here, and a side here. So it does mean that I'm okay. I have angle, angle, side theorem. Now one thing students sometimes get confused in the beginning is that the order that the angles and the sides appear in the diagram is really what's important when trying to decide which postulate or theorem to use. The order that you actually find the congruence in your body of your proof doesn't matter. So now that I have everything I need, I can state that these triangles are congruent. So I can say triangle AOB is congruent to triangle DOC, and that is because of angle, angle, side theorem. In our second proof, we do also have one of the given statements already in our body of our proof. So let's see, it says segment RT bisects angle QRS. So what that means is angle QRT is congruent to angle SRT, and that is because of definition of an angle bisector. So once I have that in my proof, I'm going to mark my diagram. So QRT is congruent to angle SRT. Now I'm going to go on to my second given. So I have angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. That's given. So again, I'm going to mark my diagram. Now I have two angles, so I need one more thing. I need a segment. And remember, there is no angle, angle, angle. So I need to figure out if there's a segment that's congruent. And in this diagram, there is, because segment RT is congruent to segment RT. That's reflexive. And the reason we want to use that, because segment RT is part of both triangles. So if I mark my diagram, I now see that I have angle and a side and an angle. So again, let's go back. I forgot to mark that on my proof, so let's go back. So I had an angle that's congruent here, another pair of angles that are congruent, and then I have a side. So now again, if I look at my diagram, I have angle, side, angle on my top triangle, and I have angle, side, angle on my bottom triangle. So I have definitely proved congruency. So my final statement is going to be triangle QRT is congruent to triangle SRT, and that is because of angle, side, angle postulate. And looking at our last proof for today, we are still trying to prove congruency of these triangles. So let's see what we have. Segment AE bisects segment BD. So let's see what that means. So if I have segment AE bisects BD, I know that these two are eventually going to be congruent, but I'm not really sure if I can state that yet. Now remember, a segment bisector doesn't talk about congruency. So the first thing I'm actually going to have to write is that C is the midpoint of segment BD. And why can I say that? That's the definition of a segment bisector. Now from there, once I state that it's a midpoint, the midpoint does use congruence in its definition. So now I can say segment BC is congruent to segment CD, and that is because of definition of a midpoint. So my segments are marked on my diagram, my congruency. So that gives me a side here. So now I'm going to go to my other given statement. So I have angle ABC is congruent to angle EDC, and that's given. So again, now I'm going to mark my diagram. I have ABC here. This angle is congruent to this angle, EDC. And let's mark that in my proof so I have an angle. So now to finish off this congruency statement, I need one more thing. I either need another angle, a pair of angles that are congruent, or another pair of sides that are congruent. And I do notice that in my diagram I have vertical angles. So let's talk about that. So I have angle ACB is congruent to angle DCE, and that is because vertical angles are congruent. So again, that gives me another angle. Now again, if I look at the order, I have angle, side, angle in my top triangle, and I have angle, side, angle in my bottom triangle. So I can finish this proof off and say that these triangles are congruent. Triangle ABC is congruent to triangle EDC, and that is because of angle, side, angle postulate.